Hey Blue Driver Nation, we're here today with another Fear No Fix video. We got another great money-saving repair for you. We're here today on this 2009 Chevy Impala 3.5 liter. If you've pulled a P0117 with your Blue Driver, it could be the coolant temperature sensor. We got a couple of pro tips here to save you a lot of time and save you a lot of money. Chris.
If you look at the official repair procedure, this is a pretty hard one, but we'll show you a couple of tricks that'll let you get around taking off the exhaust crossover pipe. And it's actually a pretty easy job. A couple of hand tools. You might need a ratcheting wrench. Just a good excuse to buy another tool.
Let's get to it. Here are the tools you need to change your coolant temperature sensor. A socket wrench, an 8mm socket, pliers or vice grips, or best case, hose clamp pliers, a 19mm ratcheting wrench, a pan, some coolant, a funnel, and a tarp for any mess.
Alright, so step one is to drain the coolant out of the car. First thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the coolant fill cap and put it aside. To drain the radiator, we're going to loosen the petcock on the radiator, which is on the passenger side near the bottom, right down here.
Chris, do we really need to drain all the coolant? Because this is taking forever.
Get your foot off my car. No, not necessarily. For this kind of work, we don't have to drain all the coolant out, but this is an older car. It used to be a rental. It was kind of abused. We don't know when it was serviced last, so we're going to drain it all and replace it. We'll get started by removing the engine cover. Remove the oil filler. Then grab the cover and pull up.
Simple.
And we'll just put this back in so we don't forget. Now, lift up on this clip, press in, and pull the connector off. Loosen the clamps on the intake boot with either a 8mm socket or a screwdriver.
I would typically use screwdriver here just because I can't make a mistake with the socket sizing.
To remove this line, slide the tab on the back sideways and then pull up. You don't have to, but just to make more room, we're also going to disconnect the throttle right here by pulling back on the plastic tab, pressing in and pulling. Now, remove the intake boot. To make more room, we'll remove the filter cover by pulling up on these two tabs. Then we tilt forward and pull up. The whole point of all of this was to get to this heater pipe right here, which is blocking access to the coolant sensor, which is down there. So we're going to remove this and then we're going to pull it out of the way. Now, we're going to loosen either these hose clamps here or the ones on the bottom. It doesn't really matter too much, just the whole point is to loosen it up so we can move this pipe out of the way.
Chris, for your Christmas present, I think some hose clamp pliers are on the list.
Right tool for the job? I don't think so. This line here carries coolant to the heater core in your car. This is where you get the heat from in the winter. By disconnecting this, all the coolant's going to come out. There shouldn't be any left there, but there's possible that some might drip out. But the big thing is, now there's going to be air in this line, so it's important that we do a proper bleed afterwards or your heater won't work. Now we're going to disconnect this hose. It's possible we might leak some coolant, so it's not a bad idea to have some cardboard or a tarp under the car. Now loosen these two 10mm bolts. Now pull the heater pipe loose and we'll just wedge it up against the ABS module over here. Now we have easy access to the coolant temperature sensor.
And you can see, Chris, there's plenty of room down in there to work, but you have a pro tip for us today compared to the OE manual that we talked about.
Yeah, the official procedure says that this crossover pipe right here has to come off. That's so you can get a socket on the coolant temperature sensor, but it's not really necessary. This car was driven for about 10 years in the snow, lots of salt, everything's kind of rusted as you can see, so it'd be a pretty hard time getting that pipe off. So we're just going to come in from the side, we'll show you another way to do it that'll save you some real frustration. Lift up on the clip on the left side of the connector and pull out. If you're very patient or you have a lot of beer, you might be able to do this with a regular wrench, but I'm not that patient and there's not enough beer. So I'm going to come in from the back of the engine with a gear wrench under the throttle body, onto the temperature sensor, and then one click at a time. There you go.
There it is. Ooh. It looks like somebody may have replaced this before. There's a little bit of Teflon tape on there. You shouldn't be using Teflon tape in any of your connections in a vehicle. You see here we have the new part, and there's already some sealant built into this part when it comes from the factory.
Now for the install. One other thing to check before you install it is that the crush washer came out on the old one. You can see that little copper piece right there, and that the new sensor has a crush washer as well. Before installing the new sensor, we'll just make sure the work area is nice and clean, there's no debris in the threads or anything like that, and then we'll screw it in by hand. And now we grab our 19mm ratcheting wrench and come in from the back under the throttle assembly again. And now we'll plug in the connector. Put the heater pipe back in position. Now the two 10mm bolts. And now torque to 89 inch-pounds or about 7 foot-pounds. Reinstall the heater hoses.
Still think you don't need hose clamp pliers?
I will take any excuse to buy new tools as long as they're on sale. And now the cover for the filter. These two tabs go in these two slots down here. Tabs go in the slots, and then I'm back. Now for the intake boot. This connector here will face the rear of the vehicle. And again here, you can use either a flathead screwdriver or an 8mm socket.
How tight are you going here, Chris?
Not too tight.
That's technical.
Yes, very. Hand tight. Connect this line by pushing down until you hear the click. Reconnect your airflow sensor and push the locking tab, and then reconnect the throttle assembly and push in on the locking tab. Remove the oil filler cap and now we reinstall the engine cover and reinsert the oil filler cap. Now we insert a funnel, and then we're going to start pouring in our coolant. This is a pre-mixed DexCool compatible coolant. And one tip, hold the jug sideways like this so you don't get the fluid surging and pouring all over the place. Now we'll just wait a second and some air will probably come out of the system. If you want, you can also gently squeeze a hose, not too hard or you might spray coolant out. And this can also help get some air out of the system. You can see the bubbles there. And we'll top it up a bit more. For the next step, we're going to have to start the engine. So we're going to take the coolant filler cap, we're going to put it on, but we're only going to engage it a little bit, just enough that it doesn't come off.
Okay, we're going to start getting the air out of the system. This time we're going to start the car and run it at 2,500 RPM for 40 seconds. Okay, now we're going to shut the car off and check the coolant.
Carefully remove the cap and top up the coolant. And the cap back on, just enough to engage the threads.
Okay, we got quite a bit of air out of the system. This time we're going to run at 2,500 RPM, this time for 30 seconds.
We're going to carefully remove the cap again and top it up.
Okay, we're going to restart again, got just a little bit more air out of it. This time we're going to start and run at 2,500 RPM for 20 seconds.
And we'll top it up one last time. Now we're going to fill the coolant bottle, about 400 milliliters of coolant. Now the coolant cap goes on all the way. Remember, from this point on, the system could be under pressure, so we don't want to take the cap off unless the engine's completely cool.
Okay, we're coming down the home stretch now. We're going to start the car, take it to 2,500 RPM until the engine comes up to temperature. That assures us that the thermostat is on. We'll also get better confirmation if the heater in fact works. So bring it up to start the car, bring it to 2,500 RPM. Okay, we have the car up to temperature now. Heater's nice and warm. So the very final step, take it to 3,000 RPM for 4 seconds, back to idle for 4 seconds. We're going to do this 3 times. Okay, now pretty simple. We're just going to shut the car off and let the engine cool.
Now everything's nice and cool. You can see the coolant level in the bottle has dropped a little bit, so we're just going to top that up.
Engine cover back on, so this thing's buttoned up, we're ready to clear the code. Learned a couple things today. No coolant on the ground, kind of lucky. Maybe he could use a little bit shorter ratcheting wrench. He probably needs some hose clamp pliers. He's resistant, but he probably needs it. Right now, we're ready to clear the code to get this car back on the road and do our drive cycle. Remember, you're not going to pass an emission test after you clear codes until you complete the drive cycle. This takes about 40 to 45 minutes, and you can check if your monitors are reset, and you'll pass a smog check if you do the smog check test in your Blue Driver. Chris, what'd you think of today?
Easy job. Got no leaks, no air in the system. The heater works, no codes. Good to go.
So that's it, and come see us at bluedriver.com. We got tons of great resources there to help you save even more money. Also, this video, like it and subscribe to us because we got new stuff coming out all the time. Until next time.